There's a natural balance or a natural resting state for an object where it is balanced between opposing forces. This state is called equilibrium. Now, if you take a pendulum, while it is vertical and in rest, it is in a state of equilibrium. When a force is brought to bear on the pendulum, meaning it's moved to the right or to the left, the pendulum will now be either in a positive state or a negative state. And depending on how far you move the pendulum to one side, or in other words, the arc that you create by moving the pendulum to one side, then the pendulum will swing back past the equilibrium point to the other side and will form the same size arc on the other side. Now, you remember some of this from your physics classes when you attended in school. In other words, the more a pendulum is taken out of its equilibrium state, then the more it will be brought back past the equilibrium point to the other side, to the same degree or arc, before eventually coming back into equilibrium. Unless an alternative force is brought to bear on it so as to bring it back into its equilibrium state much quicker. Now, you can observe that with a pendulum, but you can also observe the physics of a pendulum play out in pretty much all aspects of life, both on a macro level and on a micro level. It's this pendulum effect that enables you to observe contrast. You see, you can't observe or experience contrast without being able to observe or experience its opposite. In other words, you can't know and experience darkness without first knowing and experiencing light. You can't know cold without first knowing what it's like to feel heat. Now, not only can you see this play out within your own life and that of others, but you can see this pendulum effect play out on a macro level between which political parties are in power, between countries that go from war to peace, or from global changes of oppression to liberation. And where you see one individual being challenged by others or being challenged by circumstances, there's an equal amount of support coming from different directions for that individual. When you see a person being too proud or too cocky, then you'll also be able to observe where to be brought back past the equilibrium point to be made humble or to be put down. If a person is perceived to be overconfident or arrogant, they will face challenges from people and circumstances around them in order to bring them down, to be humbled and to be back into equilibrium. Equally, if a person displays behaviour that being shy, then circumstances or people around them will want to support them so as to bring their confidence levels up. You can observe this behaviour playing out in all situations. Take a team of individuals that you might be part of. A person on that team that displays behaviour being overconfident will be challenged by others on the team, or circumstances or events will arise in order to bring that individual back into equilibrium. Equally, if you observe an individual that displays low confidence or appears shy or humble, then there will be other people in the team or people around them that will display support for that individual. Equally, when you observe events in your own life where you felt overexcited, cocky or arrogant or proud because something might have gone extremely well for you, then in that moment where you felt cocky, an individual or an event will bring that feeling of being overly excited or cocky back down into negative, all to bring you back into equilibrium. That's what nature does. Did you ever hear the phrase, pride goeth before destruction and haughty spirit before a fall? Or in simpler terms, pride comes before the fall. There's many examples that you can observe this pendulum effect happening amongst politicians, celebrities, artists, entertainers, or sports people. These are all the easy ones to observe because their arc is greater. But equally, you'll also be able to observe this in family dynamics, in business meetings or other situations that you found yourself in. Lao Tzu referred to this equilibrium state as being the Tao. This equilibrium state is where you're not forcing yourself to be either side. You're in balance, you're in equilibrium. You see things as having both sides, positive and negative at the same time. There's an equal amount of challenges that you face as there's an equal amount of love and support that you receive. A state of equilibrium is a state of love. Love for everything, everyone, circumstances, situations. Just love. Your true nature is love. Everything that shows up in your life is to bring you to your natural state, which is love. The magic is to be able to see both sides at once and to remain in a state of equilibrium. Where before you would react negatively to a situation or a trigger, you immediately look for the opposite and therefore become able to remain in a state of equilibrium. The more you try to maintain a state that's out of your internal equilibrium, then the more energy it will take you. Imagine a concrete wrecking ball that you use for demolishing buildings, and imagine that wrecking ball as a pendulum, and you're trying to hold that ball yourself with both hands at an arc that's out of equilibrium. The amount of effort that will be needed will be huge. How long do you think you'll be able to hold that concrete ball at an arc that's out of equilibrium? It won't be very long before you'll have to let that concrete ball go, and it will swing past the equilibrium point and make an arc on the other side. Yet that's what many people are doing each and every day. They've built themselves by what they perceive others view and judge them as, whether it be their wealth, their persona, their career, whatever it might be. And it's exacerbated by having to maintain that persona on social media, especially while looking at what others are doing and the images that they post over their lives. But that's the only side that they want the world to see. They don't show the bad side. But there's always two sides. It's the law of duality that makes it so. You can't have anything that doesn't have two sides, positive or negative, black or white, good or bad, light or dark, night or day. There's always two sides. This pendulum effect for you is what I call your genius pendulum. And its job is to provide feedback to you so that you know when you're out of equilibrium. Your job is to bring yourself back into equilibrium by bringing in an alternative perspective. The more you're out of balance or out of equilibrium, then the more you'll be brought back past your equilibrium point to the other side to the same degree before coming back into equilibrium. By you trying to maintain a one-sided persona, it's going to result in not only circumstances being created to bring you back into equilibrium, but it will also make you feel like a fraud, an imposter, unauthentic, and not operating from integrity. It's a false you. Now, for me, integrity means having a clear understanding of who you truly are. It's living a life where you are your true authentic self and how you are fully integrated, a oneness. Being in equilibrium is about loving both sides of who you are, as well as seeing both sides of everything and everyone. By being in this equilibrium stage, it's love. It's seeing both sides. Likewise, as we move through life and each of the 12 states of being that I outlined on the previous episode, we can either be in equilibrium or we can be in a positive or a negative state, or in other words, out of balance or out of equilibrium within each state of being. Let's take two opposites as an example. On one side, a narcissist, and on the other side, a codependent. Being a narcissist can come across as having a grandiose sense of self-importance, being preoccupied with unlimited success or power, believing that they are special and they require excessive admiration and entitlement. On the other hand, being codependent will make that person have difficulty in making routine decisions without the reassurance of another person. They will fear disagreeing with others, have difficulty in starting projects, and may feel vulnerable and helpless when they're on alone. These two states are out of balance. They're to the extremes of positive and negative. They are not in equilibrium. The aim while you're being in one state of being is to stay in balance as we move from one stage to another and to another. It's being aware of the state and what the center of focus is for that particular state, and therefore what the purpose of being in that state is to achieve. Equally, when it comes to our thinking, our perceptions will have us in a positive state about an event, outcome, or an individual, or on the other hand, it can have us in a negative state about an event or an outcome or another individual. It's through a process that we're able to bring ourselves back into equilibrium. It's that process that exerts the force sufficient enough to bring us back into equilibrium without having an arc to be formed on the opposite side. It's a process I bring my clients through. How do you know if you're out of equilibrium? Well, take any negative emotion that you might experience, such as anger, resentment, despair, loneliness, fear, disgust, rage, annoyance, anyone. These emotions can be about yourself, another person, an event, or a circumstance. If that's what you feel, then that's when you're out of equilibrium. If you feel you have a lack of focus, or you've lost your mojo, or at a crossroads, feeling restless, unfulfilled, bored with your job or your life, then you're out of equilibrium. Because all of these emotions are feedback for you to be brought back into equilibrium. It's your choice as to whether you want it done the hard way or an easier way. And if you're not sure what that means, it might be worth re-listening to episode number 9, which I called The Call, and I talk about the feather, the brick, and the truck. Or if you want to learn more about how this is done, then come join us in our Facebook community. Now, this is a community where we're having great conversations, discussions, and insights, as well as breakthroughs, and I'm able to go deeper into the understanding for people based on where they're at and the questions that they have. So if you'd like to be part of this growing community, just head over to my website, paulwilliamdavis.com, and you'll be able to find the link as well as all the other resources and information. But until next time, I wish you every success.